inshallah, for other reading, inshallah. So without further ado, I will call upon Professor Jamal to deliver his speech today. Welcome, Professor Jamal.
Okay, welcome, Dr. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all of participants, dear Datu, dear participants. It's my pleasure to share with you my experience on the Islamic perspective of thinking and creativity. And our topic for today is nurturing and motivating creative thinking for productive generation and Islamic perspective. First of all, tafakkur in the Quran, the term that has been used for thinking in Quran is tafakkur, the main term. However, we do have other terms as well, and we will explore those terms, inshallah, in more details in our next session, inshallah ta'ala. There are about 40 terms in the Quran used for thinking. However, the main term is tafakkur. Okay, and this term tafakkur has been repeated for 18 times. Okay, when this indicates the significance of tafakkur and that Islam highly values thinking. When the main thinking term has been used this much, 18 times, okay, it indicates the significance of thinking and tafakkur as verb, and it has been used as a verb, not as a noun, which points up the actual process of thinking, not just the mere abstract concept. So we're talking about the process, the thinking process, okay? And also another observation is 17 out of 18 times, this verb has been used in its present continuous tense. Okay? And this emphasizes the need of continuity in thinking process. This use of present tense in Arabic, in the Quran, this also point out the importance of continuity in thinking. Actually, thinking is needed for both religious and worldly affairs in all matters, encountering a person. That's why it is needed. 17 also out of 18 times, the form used, the plural form of the verb has been used, which implies also the significance of the collective thinking in Islam. It shows the significance of the collective thinking in Islam. And no wonder you can see that also many concepts like such as a mutual consultation, such as shura, mutual consultation, such also sharing our thoughts with others in تواصوا وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. So it is these concepts والأمر بالمعروف, the concept of الأمر بالمعروف, encouraging what is good and discouraging what is evil. This is all to be carried out in collective sense, or in a collective what you call form. And this shows also the importance of institutionalizing thinking. And we can see that in our institutions, where this collective thinking takes place in research and in publishing books and articles, journal articles, academic articles. So this is all done in a collective way, where we need this collective thinking. And that's why this verb tafakkur has been used in its plural form in the Quran. Okay, how to institutionalize thinking? How do we do that? Well, I mentioned the academic mutual consultation. I've already mentioned that, where thinking tasks, creativity center, there is a need for creativity center, academic development, etc. So this can be practiced on the academic level as a mutual consultation, in universities and all other institutions, academic institutions. Number two, also we can see that on the level of family mutual consultation, where it is needed for family management and participative parenting skills, where we need this kind of mutual consultation. Number three, in the community mutual consultation, offering good advice, intercultural communication, and others. I mentioned وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. I did mention also الأمر بالمعروف and النهي عن المنكر as examples for community mutual consultation. Here I would like to point out, brothers and sisters, the importance of this community and all these collective thinking and mutual consultation. Which means that there is a need to carry on all our programs, all our tasks, daily tasks. There is a need for this kind of mutual consultation. The same thing can be said about political mutual consultation, or shura. Usually, brothers and sisters, this is the only usually when our colleagues, when they talk about shura, they only talk about or limit mutual consultation to political mutual consultation. That's why I put it number 4 here. Academic, family, community. We need this kind of shura and mutual consultation, where collective thinking is there, okay? Even though you think as an individual, as an independent person, but you belong to a community. You belong to the ummah. You belong, you know, to the institution, and many institutions. Okay, so this collective thinking should be observed. Okay, we cannot take carry on our tasks, take decisions, make and take decisions based on individual thinking, rather than we need the collective thinking. Then collective thinking, brothers and sisters, is needed in managing a change. Now, that is one of the great, it is a challenge, and it is also a need. We need to also manage change. What is it? Life is changing in many aspects. Life is changing, and we need to manage this change. We can look at this managing changes or change as a challenge also. One of the challenges. We need to manage this change, and we need this collective thinking to manage life change, this life change. Look at the changes that are taking place based on the, let's say, globalization, the development of also IT and other challenges that is leading to a change in life. Everything is changing. How do we manage a change? We need to do that in a form of collective thinking. We need to also we need mutual consultation to do that, to manage the change and its challenges. The next subtopic is the multiple thinking terms in the Quran. This is another phenomenon in the Quran. Actually, I put 35. The Quran uses 35 terms related to thinking. However, now and then, I still also in research for more and more thinking terms. So Alhamdulillah, I was able even to update the 35 terms up to 41 terms. Just imagine these multiple thinking terms in the Quran. I shared with you the thinking main term, which is tafakkur. However, we do have other terms such as ta'aqqul, reasoning, tafaqquh, to grasp, okay, or deep thinking. We have tadabbur, to contemplate, tadabbur, okay. So we do have so many different terms. Every term has been used for many times. We have even like tawassum, which is again related to contemplation and insight. It has to do with insight. We do have also the term yaqeen, certainty, etc., wisdom. These are all terms that are related to tafakkur. And we will have a special session next week, inshallah, about those interesting thinking terms. We see that each term is used many times in different ways for different objectives. Each term is used many times in different ways for different objective. Sometimes like it's a verb, sometimes it's a noun, sometimes so we can see that it is used. One of the interesting terms is, by the way, al-mujadala. Okay, as an example, I want to show you as an example. There is a surah, a chapter in the Quran with this title, Surah Al-Mujadala. Okay, and here the term has been used, or the noun, it's used as a noun. However, in the surah also, it's used as a verb. التي تجادلك في زوجها. So تجادل, this is a verb. والله يسمع تحاوركما. So even tahawur, you know, dialogue, is another term. That is another term. And here also we can see the collective, another example for collective thinking, at-tahawur, dialogue and debate. So actually al-mujadala has to do with the debate, and at-tahawur has to do with dialogue. So this dialogue, these debates are another form of mutual or collective thinking in the Quran, which is also daily practices in the Muslim lives. Okay, what does that imply, brothers and sisters, the use of multiple terms in the Quran? It indicates that Islam highly values thinking, which this is, by the way, pointed out by a Western sociologist, where he says that any culture which uses many terms for a concept, this implies that that culture highly values the concept. So here, that is the principle. It's like a principle. So this implies that Islam highly values thinking. This also leads to infusing thinking in the minds and the hearts of the Quran reciters. We will have more discussion on this next time, inshallah, next session. How this can, the use of the terms of thinking, the multiple use actually of thinking terms in the Quran, this will lead to infusing thinking in the minds and in the hearts of the one who recites the Quran. Brothers and sisters, no wonder that's why many non-Muslims, numerous, who recited the Quran, read the Quran, gone through the Quran, this lead them to revert to Islam, accept Islam as their religion because of this kind of infusion of thinking in their minds and in their hearts. Okay, I still remember one of those reverters, or those who reverted to Islam about 30 years ago. I still remember, I read there was an interview with that Muslim from the West, and he mentioned something I never forget. He said, while I was reading, they said, you know, what made you revert to Islam? He said, while I was reading the Quran, I felt that Quran was reading me. That the Quran was reading me. I'm reading the Quran, but actually, so this kind of interaction, tadabbur, that is what led this infusion of thinking in the heart and in the mind of the reciter. That's what led this person to embracing or reverting to Islam. Okay. One of the phenomena that I would like also to share with you, Quran uses questions with thinking terms, mashallah, to what for? Okay, what for? So many questions in the Quran uses, actually the questions, there are more than 1,200 questions in the Quran, which is another phenomenon, you know, for promoting thinking. But I'm talking about questions with a thinking term, such as what? أَفَلَمْ يَرَوْا أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا أَلَمْ تَرَ أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ أَفَلَمْ يَدَّبَّرُوا الْقَوْلَ. So these are questions in the Quran with a thinking term. This leads, you know, this style, this diction style, Quranic diction style, this leads enhancing the art of noting and observing, okay, which are required in what? In the Muslim mind and heart again. It enhances the art of noting and observing, whether it is within the Quranic text or within the universe, where the Quran is also drawing our attention to the universe for thinking, to contemplate, to think about. Okay, so this observation or observing art is needed for the following. These are just a few examples. Number one, studying social phenomena. Studying social, we need that. We need, you know, it depends on observation, on noting. It depends on noting and observation. The same thing can be mentioned about running experiments. So we are talking about also not only noting and observing within the Quranic texts, which is also needed, but also in real life. You are talking about nurturing creativity in all aspects of life. So running experiments without noting and observation, the results will be so limited. Okay, the same thing can be mentioned about conducting research work. By the way, conducting research work without observation, again, we will not be able to conduct a good research. one of the styles in the Quran, sharing with you, brothers and sisters, one of the styles in the Quran is the using hypothesis. When we talk about research work, it's using hypothesis. And I found out in some surahs, some chapters, Quranic chapters, you can find out up to 20, like Surah At-Tur, 20 probabilities, 20 hypotheses. MashaAllah. What does that mean? It means that, you know, the reciter of the Quran with tadabbur, we can also improve our research capabilities, our research skills, you know. And when we conduct a research, we will be better researchers. That's what it means. Okay, the next one is improving conceptualization or conceptualizing skills. Okay, I still remember the first book I came across. It was 1990. 1990 was my first time to come across that book. The book is available online, brothers and sisters, as a PDF. The book is it talks about conceptualization. Okay, it talks about how to break through with conceptualization. The book is written by a professor, a mechanical engineer. His name is James Adams. Okay, James Adams, where he mentions that creativity is based on conceptualizing. Okay, what does that mean? To think in concepts, merely to think in concepts, rather than thinking in ideas. Because why? Because the concepts are the mothers of idea. The concept is the mother of the idea. So once you have a concept, you can come up with many ideas, not only with a limited one idea or two ideas. So that's what I'm talking about, improving conceptualizing skills. Okay, the last one here, asking or using questions with thinking terms, is triggering inspiration. Triggering inspiration. Okay, how we talk about intuitive thinking here. Intuitive thinking. By the way, and intuitive thinking is needed in our daily life for creativity, for innovation, for research, for many, achieving many tasks, intuition and inspiration. So with the use of questions with thinking terms, this can lead to triggering inspiration, and based on real life or life real examples, as has been mentioned in the Quran. Quran draw our attention to certain phenomena, like the creation of mankind, the creation of mankind. And so like that is one of the examples used. So triggering inspiration. As a good example, when Quran talks about the 9 stages of embryo. You are talking about embryology. Embryology is one of the latest new fields of knowledge. However, Quran touched upon embryology more than 1,400 years ago, 1,443. That is, if we use the Hijrah calendar. Okay, so this I just wanted to show. There was a conference in Britain, and Sheikh Abdul Majid al-Zanadani from Yemen, he mentioned this in his one of his lectures. He presented a paper. The conference was about related to scientific phenomenon. So he presented a paper mainly on the 9 stages of a human being, of the embryo in the womb of the mothers. And one of the terms used by the Quran is al-mudgha. Al-mudgha, one of the stages. A chewing, it's like a chewing or a chewed piece of meat. A chewed piece of meat. And Sheikh Abdul Majid mentions that one of the Western scientists, only because of this, he said he's a scientist, and he said, I was looking for a term for this stage, al-mudgha. And he said, this is the best description for that stage. And as a result, he asked Sheikh Abdul Majid, is this mentioned 1,400, more than, this was about 30 years ago. So he mentioned, is this mentioned in the Quran? He said, yes. So he showed him the Quran in the Mus'haf. As a result, that scientist reverted to Islam. Okay, status of thinking. We have a lot to discuss, but unfortunately we have a limited time. I will try to finish. The status of thinking in Islam. We see that is thinking is needed in our ibadat as well, as we need it for establishing Islamic civilization. These are the 2 purposes that we have been created for, as mentioned in the Quran. And one of them is إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. The other one, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. So, in order to fulfill these purposes of creation, we need to be creative. We need to use also thinking and to think. That is why thinking can be considered as an obligation. This is not me. This is our scholars say that thinking is an obligation. That is the status of thinking in Quran or in Islam. Also, Islam promotes creativity. This is an example. من سن في الإسلام سنة حسنة فعمل بها بعده كتب له مثل أجر من عمل بها لا ينقص من أجورهم شيء. He who introduced some good practice in Islam, which was followed after him by people, he would be assured of reward like one who followed it. All the rewards of those who followed him also will be added to his rewards, to the record of the rewards. One of the good examples, I mentioned this in my book, in promoting creativity. You see, the Prophet ﷺ says, إِذَا حَكَمَ الْحَاكِمْ فَاجْتَهَدَ ثُمَّ أَصَابَ فَلَهُ أَجْرَانِ وَإِذَا أَخْطَأَ فَلَهُ أَجْرٌ. Actually, it's not only a judge, brothers and sisters, also a scholar. So you are talking about a judge or a scholar. This is promoting the effort. You cannot promote thinking and creativity without promoting the effort. And Islam values effort. Here, the thing is that Islam rewards the effort. Even you do a mistake or something wrong, then there is a reward, one reward. Otherwise, nobody will dare to innovate, to think, to practice. Okay, this is a saying we can. This is also related. Thinking is related to Islamic worldview. Okay, this is mentioned by Datu Allah Yarham, Datu Professor Dr. Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman in his book Quranic Worldview. So this was mentioned that as a Khalifa, as a steward, Allah created us to build civilization. Allah created us with many capabilities and with many intellectual faculties. So that's what it is, brothers and sisters. So and also in the same time, the world is made subservient to us, and with that, equipping us with special faculties to carry our task of Khalifa. Okay. That Islam encouraged thinking and creativity in the following way. Number one, divine commands on mankind to think and reflect and ponder. Number two, by providing various thinking preferences and models, by the way, such as inquisitive and hypothetical thinking that I mentioned during my session today. Number three, providing a big room for practicing creativity. And that's big room is when we talked about the purposes of creation as Abdulillah and Khalifa. Okay, observation on divine laws. Well, this is, just some observations. I think I might stop here. I can share with you later the PowerPoint. Maybe I stop here for attending to questions and answers, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum.
So Jamal, you can proceed. You can proceed a few more minutes, no problem. 5 or 6 minutes, because there is no question, no Q&A.
Okay.
The participant will ask through the chat box, and then we'll let you know. You will answer later.
Okay. I was talking about. You see, now there are three main rooms for practicing creativity and thinking. There are three rooms. First room, which I mentioned, was ijtihad. That is related to religious affairs and matters. Okay, and so the ijtihad is needed. So that is there as a Abdulillah here, as a servant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two and three comes under the building up. We need to cultivate the earth, cultivating the earth. And here we are talking about two main domains. One is social science, and the other one is applied science. In order to build up the civilization, the Islamic civilization, so we need also we need efforts, we need thinking, we need creativity in social sciences as well as in applied science. You can see then that there is a room for thinking and creativity in all life aspects and disciplines. And in this way, everyone, every Muslim, so whether, you know, we can talk about disciplines, academic, let's say, disciplines, it should fall within one of these three: religious, social science, or applied science, which means that every single Muslim, no matter what is your specialization, no matter what is your position, where you are, you need to be creative and you need to practice thinking, in so many ways, in making decisions, in solving problems, in improving life, improving institutions, and say that is what they call usages of creativity. The usages of creativity is actually four. So the first one is improvement, to improve. Number two is to solve problems. Number three is to achieve tasks. And number four is to look for opportunities. To look for opportunities. You cannot look for opportunities if you don't think, if you are not creative. That's why, in order to improve our society, our Muslim community, whether at the social level or whether at the applied science level or also at the religious affairs and matters level, and this takes me to one important issue within the ijtihad, which is related creativity in Islamic affairs and matters. Scholars say that ijtihad is continuous. We need to do ijtihad continuously, even if we do have fatwa from scholars with regard to a specific matter. We need to do ijtihad again and times and again in our life. Why? We need to renew ijtihad, the renewal of ijtihad. That is so important. That's why we have a new, I believe, good fatwa which overcome many contemporary challenges with regard to religious matters today. Okay, so this is, I think the time is up, Dato, so I would like to stop here.
So thank you very much, Professor Jamal, for giving lecture on time, Alhamdulillah. Now I think everybody realized that how important thinking is. That's the reason why the course on Islam and creativity has been given compulsory subject to all the students at IIUM. And Professor Jamal has been given the task to develop the curriculum and to establish the textbook. I think for those who are interested, I will share with you the e-book. If you don't, it's difficult to get the hard copy book. And creativity, thinking, creativity is important in our life, in the process of managing change, which is not applicable only to individual with the community in your institution. Even when you become a researcher, one of the participants here, the Ahmed, mentioned in the chat box that as a researcher, I think this subject is very important for him. I hope the others also who share the same view. And thinking is required in Islam. And according to Professor Jamal, it is an obligation in Islam. I think you will realize that in every aspect of our life require thinking. He has given only one of the definition of thinking, but there are many others, inshallah, will come to this class. We have not given enough time. I'm sorry to Professor Jamal. Jamal should be at least a 6 to 7 weeks lecture for him. But in the future, inshallah, this subject will be included into a more detailed presentation from Professor Jamal, inshallah. So it's not the end of your meeting with Professor Jamal. Next week, there will be another final meeting with him before Idul Fitri. Next, coming up is we have our speaker is already waiting. We have Professor Shukran. Professor Shukran is the dean of this kuliah. He is the key person, the dean of Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman Kuliah of Islamic Review Knowledge and Human Sciences. And for your information, he will be talking about the Islamization of knowledge. This is how important Islamization is to become the key thing in IUM, maybe not yet in some other universities. And after we have got the eight subjects, basic knowledge in Islam, how do you relate or integrate those knowledge into your areas? If you are a medical doctor, if you are a political scientist and so on, how do we integrate those? So this is the task given to Professor Shukran. Professor Shukran is a graduate with master's bachelor from International Islamic University with 2 bachelors. And he got bachelor in Islamic Review Knowledge and bachelor of Human Sciences. He understands how integration it is. So without further ado, I will call upon Prof. Shukran to deliver his lecture. Welcome, Professor Shukran.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Professor Emeritus Dr. Jamal Osman. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amma ba'd. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very pleasant morning, and maybe to some of you evening. Right, so welcome to this session whereby we are going to discuss, mention about Islamization of knowledge. Thank you very much to IIIT, led by Professor Emeritus Dr. Jamal Osman, for conceptualizing, designing, and now implementing this very important certificate of Islamic Review Knowledge. Right, I'm very pleased to be with you this morning, and I think it is not too late for me to greet all of you. Ramadan Kareem. May Allah accept our sawm, our fasting, and our prayers in this blessed month of Ramadan. Like I have always mentioned to my students, my colleagues, that Ramadan is a much awaited moment, not only for us to celebrate the moment, but for us to enhance our relationship with our Creator, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, and also our relationship with our fellow brothers and sisters, as well as with our environment. And this is not a mere saying, right? So this requires knowledge. So in order to have good relationship with our Lord, with our Creator, with Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, we need knowledge. In order to have good relationship with people, we need knowledge. In order to have good or effective relationship with our environment, we need knowledge. And today we are going to talk about Islamization of knowledge, or in IUM, we always refer it to Islamization of human knowledge. right? Not all knowledge have to be Islamized. To some people say that, and some people say that we only need to Islamize human knowledge. All right. So thank you very much, Datuk, for giving me this assignment. I'm not the best person to talk about Islamization of knowledge. I am a lecturer in psychology. I will be sharing with all of you how do we do Islamization when we teach psychology, when we do research in psychology in that sense. Datuk Jamil has a very important role in nurturing me and my friends in this agenda of Islamization. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Jamil Osman, for having the trust in us to explore, support, and now lead Islamization agenda in the university. We are actually inheriting the work of Professor Dr. Jamil, who have done a lot in Islamization of knowledge, in all aspects of knowledge. I think that this morning I will be dealing with some fundamentals in the notion or in the concept of Islamization of knowledge. Maybe it will be good for me to remind myself and also my brothers and sisters here to look at what Islamization is all about and what knowledge is all about as well. Let's look at the connotation, let's look at the definition we have on the two important words in the phrase Islamization of knowledge. Allow me to now share my slides, simple slides. Can we see the slide now? Okay, introduction to Islamization of knowledge. This is only an introduction. We're not going to go in detail or into detail of the discussion of Islamization of knowledge, the school of thought in Islamization of knowledge, because there are many school of thought. There are many approaches also in the agenda of Islamization of knowledge. I mean, some even use the term Islamization of knowledge. Some even use the word Islamization of human knowledge that I mentioned just now, right? So we can expect this content to be covered in the discussion today and next week, right? So today we'll be looking at the concept of knowledge and its philosophical notion. Then we'll be looking at definition of Islamization. And the third one, we'll be looking at Islamization and the approaches to the sources of knowledge. So maybe we can focus on these three today. Hopefully we can cover, all right? Dato, I think we will be doing this in less academic manner. We'll be just sharing idea. I'll be sharing what I've done with my students when I do this Islamization of psychology in that sense.
Yeah, we go into general, inshallah.
Yes. I have until 10:30, right, Dato?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yes, yes.
It's
So
okay,
let us put some...
no problem.
Yeah.
And they will have a break for half an hour after your class.
All right, okay. So maybe we'll look at knowledge and give some context to that, right? So we do not want to discuss knowledge in silo. We want to look at knowledge and how do we link with this knowledge? I mean, what is the importance of knowledge to our life, right? So what is knowledge and what is the link between man and knowledge? All right, so when we talk about Islamization of knowledge, where are we in that? Right? And why do we discuss this Islamization? Or why do we discuss knowledge even? So generally, knowledge, we look at knowledge first, literally, I think I've borrowed some ideas from the dictionary. Knowledge can be referred to as information. It can be information. It can be awareness. It can be fact. It can be truth. Right? Some knowledge come in the form of information. All right? Come in the form of our awareness. Come in the form of facts. And some come in the form of truth, which cannot be disputed. Okay? All right. So about what? Awareness about what? About what do we talk about when we talk about awareness? Generally, it can be referred to information or awareness or fact or truth about the what of a subject matter or of something. Like in my case, I teach students, okay, I supply them or I transfer with them, I discuss with them information, and some are fact and some are truth about human characteristics, right? So the what in my case is human characteristics. If you are a medical doctor, maybe the what in your information is human anatomy, medicine, for example. Okay, so in my case, it will be behaviors or cognitive processes. And are they all? What else? Right? So when we go to Western literature, okay, and when we define psychology, they say psychology is a scientific study of human behavior and mental processes. Emotion, blah, 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 blah. Right? But what else? Right? What else? So in Islamization of knowledge, right? So our sources of the what, okay, it is not limited. It's not limited to textbook. It is not limited to empirical work. It is not reported to journal articles, right? What are the other sources that we have in order to know the subject matter that we have to cover, right? So when we talk about knowledge, also we discuss about why do we discuss it? Why the subject matter is discussed. It's not only about what it is all about, but why do we discuss that? And why does that subject take place? Or why does a situation take place, for example? And third is, when we talk about knowledge, facts, information, or truth, okay, so we discuss also how to attain the information, or how to perform something like skill, for example, how to perform teaching duty, how to perform assessment duty, how to perform driving tasks, something like that. Okay, the how, right? And then where does that situation happen? Where does the subject take place? And where does the subject can be applied or should be applied? Right? So the information, the fact, the awareness that we discuss also involve or cover the time. Okay? When does the situation, when does the occurrence or occasion happens? Right? When the subject happens, when the subject could be applied, or when the subject could not be applied. So these are something that we discuss in knowledge as well. And who, the last one is who are in the subject matter, right? Who, from whom we learn, on whom we apply, etc., etc. So we have people here, we have subject matter here, we have processes here. If you look at this, okay, we have the 5W and 1H, right? So in our training, okay, this is what we call the 6 honest serving men, Kipling method. So in order to know something, you have to attend to. In order to deal with something, you have to attend to these questions. All right? So where is Islamization here? We will discuss after this. Right? So now we know that knowledge can be about know what, can be about know how, can be about know what, how, know why, know when, know where, know who. All right? So this is something that we can relate to Islamic perspective as well. Okay, if you talk about behavior, what does empirical, findings say about behavior? And what does, our Quran, our Sunnah say about behavior? And whatever subject matter that we deal with, whatever subject matter that we address, we can go to various sources, not limited to the empirical sources, not limited to the sources written by human, but revealed by God as well. All right. Now, so I think that's a bit of knowledge. That is a bit of fundamental about knowledge. And why do we need knowledge? Why do we need knowledge? What is the relationship between man and knowledge? Alhamdulillah, we are sent to this earth as a Khalifa. Right? Our lecturers, in IIUM, told us that Khalifa does not mean leader. Okay? Khalifa means a person who has to do siyasatul dunya wa hifzuddin, or hifzuddin wa siyasatul dunya. So we are here tasked Okay, we are here given duties. All right, we are here shouldering responsibilities to safeguard the way of life. We are here tasked or given responsibility, right? Shouldering duties to administer this world. Okay, administer this world like siyasat dunya. We have to administer this world. We have to safeguard the way of life. Hifzuddin. It's not about religion here, it's about way of life. Allah has given us our way of life, and we are here to make sure that we adhere to the way of life given to us by God, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are hadiths which contain information which contain truth about how to lead life. So as Khalifa, we have these two sources. These guidelines for us to obey, for us to adhere to. Alright? So as Khalifa on this earth, we need to administer the world. Like me, psychologist, I need to administer, I need to learn, I need to manage people. If you are a zoologist, for example, so you have to learn, manage, deal with animals. If you learn political science, you are responsible, you are tasked to care for, learn about people administration. Right? So this is administering the world. At the same time, we have to safeguard religion so that we don't deviate, we don't depart from the guideline given to us. This is the role of Khalifa. Now, in order to become good Khalifa, we need knowledge. Right? Some psychologists say we need to have competencies. We have to have competencies. And human science or psychology has put to us some element which, if we can borrow, some elements which are knowledge, knowledge, the know what, and then the know-how, skills, and then the ability. It's not only about knowledge, but how do you translate the knowledge into ability and other characteristics as well, our interests, our personality, our characteristics, right? So these are the component of knowledge, which are not only at the awareness level, which are not only at the information level, which are not only at the knowledge level, but they are at the application level as well, the ability. Right? So competencies that we have are accounted for by constitute of knowledge, the know what, constitute of know how, the skills, right? Constitute also the abilities. We have to have the ability. In the Quran, there are 16 times which Allah mentioned ulul albab. All right. So when I teach psychological assessment, we need to develop skill. We need to develop psychological tests to measure human characteristic. And this semester, we go to the Quran and then we want to find characteristics of human. And one of my students found or would like to work with the concept of ulul albab. Right? So he went to, or they went to tafsir, they went to the Quran itself, they went to literature which defines ulul albab. And they found that ulul albab actually referring to ability to relate. The ability to relate to God, ability to relate to self, ability to relate to other people, ability to relate to environment, and ability to relate to future as well. Right? So, and to have that ability, you need to be backed by knowledge. And you need to have the skills as well on how to operationalize, on how to do the concept that you have learned, how to operationalize the information that you have acquired in that sense. And the other characteristic also refer to other characteristics. What are the values that we have to have? Okay, so values refer to the governing power within us. Okay, what are the governing power or values that can regulate our behavior from within us? The inner factor that can regulate our behavior, that can regulate our relationship with ourselves, that can govern or regulate our relationship with God, with other people, with environment, with the future, right? And how do we get these values? It's just through knowledge as well. And who is going to give us this? Right? So we need who here? The Murabbi, for example, the teachers, the instructors, the lecturers, the professors, resource people, right? So in Islam, in Islamization of knowledge, we are not only talking about transferring idea or information. Okay, we also transfer truth. Okay, we also transfer values. We also teach on how to do. Okay, not only rhetoric, but we also teach or educate or develop or nurture people on how to do things. Now, this is the importance of knowledge, and that is the very first ayah revealed to our Prophet. Iqra. Right? So why the first ayah revealed to the Prophet Muhammad SAW was Iqra? Because Iqra is an order or injunction, is a verdict for us to be knowledgeable people. Okay, in IIUM, we were told by our professors that when Allah asked us to read or to do Iqra, that Allah say in the Quran many places that you read text that I reveal, you read ayat which I sent through our Prophet Muhammad SAW, ayat al-maqru'ah, ayat which are written, which are read. Okay, and you also read ayat which are given in the form of science, in the form of in our environment there are many signs, SIGN, okay, science. There are many signs that we can learn from. Okay, we can realize the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by observing, okay, our environment, by doing observation on our environment, depending on the subject matter you have chosen to deal with. Like in my case, I've chosen to deal with human behavior. I've chosen to deal with human. So what do I observe? I observe human behavior in order to know their thinking processes, in order to know their emotion, in order to know or predict their future behavior, things like those. Right? So in order to do this observation, we need to have methods, we need to have methodology, we need to have processes, we need to have the know-how. All right? So when we learn Islamization of knowledge, our lecturer would say that itself is Islamic, because doing observation is what Allah has ordered us to do when the verse Iqra was revealed to Prophet Muhammad SAW. So far, so good?
Okay, well,
All right.
Yeah.
So that is the basic definition of knowledge, and contextualizing knowledge to our role as a vicegerent or as Khalifa in this world. Right? We need knowledge in order to become Khalifa, in order to become good Khalifa, in order to become someone who can take care of this world well, okay, who can take care of the revealed sources, who can take care of the guidance, who are going to make sure that all guidances are being adhered to. Okay. Right. Okay, now let's look at Islamization. So Islamization, I am borrowing some lines from Professor Muhammad Kamal Hassan, plus other resources as well, okay, when they define Islamization. So I think part of speech here, Islamization would connote a process. It's a process to Islamize knowledge, or it's a process to Islamize knowledge, or some would say Islamize or Islamize human knowledge. Okay, this is a general statement. Islam is a way of life. Islam is deen, okay, which main sources and which main references are the Quran and many hadiths. Hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad SAW. Okay, Islam provides good foundation on how do we relate with other people. Like I mentioned just now, we have to relate with other people. We are social beings as well, right? So Islam provides good foundation on how do we relate to our God, on how do we relate to our people in our surrounding, and object, animal, wherever they are in our environment. Islam provides good foundation, okay, on the way individuals interact and bring about impact on others. How do we interact with others, and how do we bring impact or affect, okay, or influence others' behavior or others' actions on this earth? Right? So we have guidelines for that in the Quran and Sunnah. Islam is not only a religion, but a complete way of life. Complete way of life, which we call deen. That this is why we have been taught that deen is not translated as religion, but deen is translated as complete way of life, including the way to source knowledge, including the way to apply knowledge, including the way to transfer knowledge to other people. Right? The complete way of life covers and regulates all aspects of socio-economic spiritual system. Now, this is because Khalifa human on this earth needs hasanah, needs well-being. We need well-being. Whenever we relate to other people, we need well-being. We need to have quality relationship. We do not want to have conflict with other people. We do not want to have conflict within ourselves. We do not want to have conflict with our environment even. And that requires guidelines. And where are the guidelines? The guidelines are available in the Quran, are available in the Sunnah, and the Hadith, are also available in the environment whereby we have to acquire. We have to acquire, we have to design, and then we have to apply so that we can govern this world better. And when we have good governance, when we have good regulation, we can attain well-being within ourselves and with other people. Right? So this is always something that we always recite in our dua. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzaban nar. Right? So we have to attain hasanah, we have to attain well-being, and we have to put effort to attain the hasanah in the genuine manner. Right? So we want to have the genuine hasanah. That we want to have truth in whatever we do. Right? So this is the role of knowledge as well. We do not want to have well-being which is temporary. We do not want to have well-being which is linked to material or substances. Right? So what are the sources of hasanah? What are the sources of well-being? Right? So Islam has that, okay, in its guideline as well. And when we talk about psychology, for example, okay, we talk about helping people to attain well-being. Right? So we will also relate to other sources of psychology, which is not only the textbook from the West, but also the Quran, Sunnah, and also the Turath, okay, which are written by our past scholars. Okay, Kamal Hassan, Professor Emeritus Muhammad Kamal Hassan said, Islamization is the proper way of using, okay, is a proper way of us using the God-given intellect. Now, what is the proper way of giving the what is the proper way of using the God-given intellect? Like I said just now, ulul albab, okay, they use their intellectual capacity to relate with themselves, to know about themselves, to relate with their God, okay, to relate with the environment, okay, using knowledge, using akal to relate with the environment, and using akal to also relate with the future. Right? So we use the God-given akal in the pursuit of well-being in this world and well-being in the hereafter. And our hasanah is not only for this world. The well-being that we are working hard for is not only for our well-being on this earth, but well-being in the hereafter as well. So that is the purpose of Islamization. The purpose of Islamization is to properly use, okay, the intellectual capacity that Allah has granted us, okay, to relate well with ourselves, with God, with environment, okay, with other people, and also with the future. And if you read Muhammad Kamal Hassan's paper on Sejahtera, on spirituality, he stresses that as well. Now, Islamization of human knowledge is an alternative intellectual paradigm for pursuing contemporary knowledge, okay, for teaching contemporary knowledge, for developing contemporary human knowledge, for disseminating, for utilizing, for critiquing, and for evaluating the contemporary human knowledge. Okay, so Islamization of human knowledge is an effort to address, discuss modern knowledge from Islamic perspective. So we have so many knowledge, we have so many domain of knowledge, we have so many specialization of knowledge. How do we address, how do we slice, how do we dissect the knowledge from Islamic perspective? Right, so this is something that we want to discuss, okay, about knowledge. We want to look at the property of knowledge. When we talk about knowledge, for example, sociology or humanity or psychology or even medical science as well, okay, we want to look at what are the properties of knowledge. Maybe some of you have heard of the notion of epistemology, ontology, zoology, teleology before this, right? But I'm not going to use those terms, but I'm going to just explain what those forums are referring to. Okay. We want to talk about philosophical notions of knowledge today. Okay, when we talk about knowledge, okay, the knowledge has property. This is what I teach my students in the philosophy of psychology, right? So when we want to look at a knowledge, okay, we want to understand what does that knowledge entail, or what does that knowledge encompass. Let's say psychology is a study of human behavior and mental processes in a scientific way, or psychology is a scientific study of human behavior and mental processes, right? So we have some notions, some philosophical notions here to look at, and only after we know the notions, only after we know the properties of knowledge, our effort to do Islamization will be easier. Right? So in dealing with knowledge, so let's look at some fundamental questions. In dealing with knowledge, what are the sources of knowledge? What are the sources of knowledge in question? Like in my case, my domain of knowledge that I deal with is psychology. Okay, if you are dealing with communication domain of knowledge, so what are the sources of knowledge for communication, for example? So that is one question. What are the sources of knowledge? In learning a particular knowledge, what do we study? Like in psychology, do I only study behavior? Do I only study mental processes? Do I only study emotion? Right? So what about soul? What about nafs, which are not written in Western textbook, for example? Right. So when our sources of knowledge, okay, go beyond textbook, I mean Western textbook, or empirical work or findings, okay, we will find other subject matters. What are the subject matters, okay, given or obtained from the sources? And what are the other definitions of the subject matter that we have learned from the Western literature? Okay. The third one is, when we deal with the sources, what principles do we learn? Right? When we deal with the Quran, for example, what principles, okay, that we learn about how to source knowledge? Okay, what values do we take out, okay, from the subject matter that we found in the Quran and Sunnah? What are the principles that we can turn into principles or guidance that help us to govern or administer this world? All right. So these are the value, the practice, or the valuable practice that we can derive from the sources. And the last one is the purposes of knowledge. Why do we study certain subject? It has to be with reason. It has to be with meaning. And this is why even some Islamic scholars, some Islamic studies scholars say that even the subject like usul fiqh, okay, can be Islamized as well, especially when you talk about the purposes of studying fiqh, for example. Right? So how can we use principles? How can we use concept? How can we use qawaid al-fiqh, for example, to solve or to address or to explain the current phenomena in the society. All right. So Islamization of knowledge would require you to look at these four notions of knowledge. One is on the sources. Second is on the subject matter which are being given by the alternative sources of knowledge, or not to say alternative, but the real or the fundamental sources of knowledge, which is Quran and Sunnah. And the third one is on the values that we can derive, one, also the valuable practice that we can derive from the sources. Right, the skills, for example, and the last one is the purposes. Why do we study certain knowledge in that sense? If you have heard of this Iok that I said just now, the epistemology can be linked to the first one, the ontology can be linked to the second one, the third axiology, the value aspect can be linked to the third one, and the teleology, the purposes can be linked to the fourth one. Maybe you will learn this more from Professor Hazizan, okay, when he talk about Islamization of human sciences after this. All right, so these are the four key to do Islamization. So like my students, when they are discussing a concept, okay, they have to touch that four aspect. They have to address that four aspect. Now, for example, when they talk about job satisfaction, they are going to go to the literature, and they will also go to the ayat in the Quran, hadith, to look at how Islam look at job satisfaction. And normally they will find, better explanation, in the Quran and in the hadith as well, when they go to the sources which are fundamental, like Quran and Sunnah. So that is one process to Islamize knowledge. That is by leading, or that is by guiding knowledge worker or knowledge seeker to go to the Islamic sources, right? The sources which Islam has revealed to us. Second is, when you deal with Quran and Sunnah, you are going to have rich subject matter. You can have subject matters which are not discussed in the conventional literature. The ontology. You are going to have truth about the subject as well. Not only theory, because Quran will give us truth. It is not a tentative explanation or theory about a subject. And the third one is the values. Okay, what are the learning points? Okay, what are the learning points? What are the values? What are the practices which can be designed based on the subject, based on the approaches that we found in the Quran? And the fourth one is, how are we going to benefit from whatever we have derived? Okay, so it has to be with purpose. Khairukum anfa'uhum linnas. Khairun nas anfa'uhum linnas. The best people among you are people who will give benefit to other people. Alright, so the knowledge, the know-how, the know-what, the know-who that we have must be put to practice, must be used to help people change, must be applied to help people to develop. Okay, must be used to help people to improve. So we always talk about CID here. So how to help people to change, to improve, to develop? We need to substantiate with knowledge. We cannot just give them order or directive for them to CID, to change, to improve, and to develop, but we have to lead them with knowledge. Let them have informed change. Let them have informed development. Let them have informed improvement. And that information will come from various sources, and the rich sources will be of Quran and Sunnah. And this is how Islamization can be operationalized as well. It is not only to link one concept with another concept like matchmaking. Okay, we are also going to dig into the sources of Quran, sources of Hadith, to look at what else are there which are not being mentioned in the conventional literature. Dr. Jamal, I think I have used the time, 30 minutes. Okay, that's about it this week. Inshallah, we will continue next week. I hope I have told or mentioned or say something which is beneficial to you, right? So hopefully also I have introduced to you the concept of Islamization of knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Shukran, for giving your lecture according to the times. In fact, you have a few more minutes based on my watch. We don't entertain questions because we do not have much time, but there are people who can ask through the chat box.
All right.
So, okay, and if we cannot answer it now, then I will pass this one to Professor Shukran to answer it in the next class.
All right.
So, yeah, thank you very much, Professor Shukran, for giving us the concept of knowledge and in Islam, how important knowledge is in Islam, and you are able to relate knowledge to the to man. And as a Khalifa, as mentioned, is in this world we need knowledge in all kind of discipline. So, he did not mention, but specifically, but there are two kind of knowledge for your information. There's one ilmu akli, one ilmu nakli. Ilmu akli is the human thinking, the knowledge. There are some Islamic and some non-Islamic. Ilmu nakli is from Al-Quran and Sunnah being on Wahyu. So the reason why Professor Shukran said that Islamization is important to integrate these two kind of knowledge, akli and nakli. So as he mentioned, there are many terms you will find in your reading material. Some would mention it integration of knowledge. Some would say that Islamization of knowledge. Some would say Islamization of knowledge. And the latest one, Professor Shukran mentioned about relevantization of knowledge. That means for those who are in Islamic studies, they relate that to the current situation. And also you did mention about IOHK, Islamization of human knowledge. So the ultimate aim is to get the hasanah in this world and the hereafter. That is more important. So not only to get the success in this world, but inshallah, if we are able to do this, we'll get the hasanah in this world and the hereafter. Thank you very much, Professor Shukran.
Thank you.
Well, we'll see you again next week, inshallah. So please kindly share your notes
Okay.
to me, so we'll share with all the others in the group.
All right.
And also, if you have any other reading materials that can be read by our participant,
Yeah.
you can also share. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Assalamualaikum.
Your students are coming from many countries, Prof. Shukran, from Russia, from Europe, from
Mashallah.
Africa, mashallah, from Hong Kong.
Thank you for this network.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
look forward to doing more, inshallah. All right.
And in fact, for those who registered, about 4,800, they are coming from 62 countries. And they are in our group, although they are not attending. Some of them are attending through the Zoom,
Yes.
Facebook, and the YouTube channel. Because in Africa now is maybe they are doing their Qiyamul Lail. At the same time is attending our program. So, yeah, so inshallah, yeah, the knowledge will benefit everybody, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, salam.
So for the others, we have a break. Yeah, I wish to welcome you to the sessions.
Thank you.
Okay, this is third session today. You'll be talking about Islamization in human sciences. So for the others information, for your information, we have students from many countries. Somebody mentioned from Australia, Brother Abdul Rufai from Australia, Brother Ibrahim from Russia, and many others from Africa. They are having their sahur, and some of them are performing their tahajjud, some having their qiyamul lail in the mosque. So this is the report that we received from Africa. And we have from Singapore, Sister Ruby Jan and the others. And we have Brother Azhar Hassan from Qatar.
MashaAllah.
So Alhamdulillah, the participation from various countries in the world. Some of them may know you very well, so but they are repeating the lecture from you. But for your information, many people are asking from the e-book. I've already shared the e-book written by Prof. Hazizan, the Islamic perspective on sociology and anthropology, which you can buy through the e-book, Kota Buku or Book Capital. Welcome, Dr. Nenek. I've seen that from Indonesia, near the beach. Our topic today is not going to be technical, as I mentioned to Prof. Hazizan. You have to look at the Islamization of knowledge in human sciences. So he will not touch very technical on sociology only, or on anthropology, but maybe we touch everything, the knowledge related to human sciences. So without further ado, I just introduced a little bit. Prof. Hazizan was among the pioneer dean of the Kuliah also. He was the dean of the Kuliah of Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman and Islamic Worldview knowledge before. And now, this morning, we have Professor Shukran is the current dean. So he's a very senior person in the faculty and in the university. So without further ado, I wish to welcome Prof. Hazizan.
Okay, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to all of you. And also good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all participants from different parts of the world. I am very happy to know this. And in fact, this is very much subject matter of human sciences, because we are dealing with human. And basically, we are talking to human. There are lots of aspects of human that we need to address. So first of all, let me thank the organizer, Dato Jamal, and also IIIT for giving me opportunity to share some views, not really to teach, but I think from interaction, we should have more for our own self to learn about the subject matter or the topic. So the focus is basically certificate in Islamic Worldview knowledge, and therefore we should keep in mind that the focus of this program is on the subjects which are considered as the Islamic revealed knowledge, which are these. And part of this, I think the Institute has also taken initiative to also expose our audience or participants to a kind of link, how what we call sciences and knowledge generated originally from revelation, what later developed as Islamic religious sciences. There are so many, and also the sciences which are in the framework of thinking about knowledge in the current situation may not be regarded as related to religion, like natural sciences and human sciences or social sciences. And already we can see here the gap, the link, and the missing.
Can you the slide make it bigger? So remove the next slide, so that we will focus on the current slides only.
Oh, you have this? I do not know how to.
We have you have the two columns here. One, the current slide. One, the next slide.
Oh, it appeared there.
Oh,
okay.
I'm not sure.
I thought it goes to the. Let me. Okay, thank you very much. Because normally this is for. Yes. For the presenter, but it appeared there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right. Let me see how.
For those who are using handphone, it's easy for them to.
Yeah. I let me see here. Duplicate cannot.
Okay. Now better. Yeah.
Just this one better.
No, it's good.
Oh, okay.
No, just now. Okay, now. All right.
Now it's okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. So, yes, thank you, Dato, for making me aware of this. So, from there, we are now moving to. You cannot see the two screen now,
Yeah.
Only one screen. Okay, very good. So, my task is today is to share some ideas on Islamization of knowledge in human sciences. You can also retitle it as Islamization of human sciences and so on, depending on how you want to address the topic. I am Hazizan Mohamed from Department of Sociology and Anthropology in the Faculty of Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, Kuliah of Islamic Worldview Knowledge and Human Sciences. I believe, for your information, this Kuliah or this faculty has been recently named as Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, Kuliah of Islamic Worldview Knowledge and Human Sciences. And it is at the International Islamic University, Malaysia. When Dato' informed me or told me not to be too academic, so I will try to be. I will try my best not to be too academic, even though I also do not know how this will take place. And anyway, for any topic, for any subject, I believe that we have varying degrees of knowledge of that particular subject. So how much, for example, how much knowledge of this topic that we know, it could be at this level for some, and the others are there, and so on like this. So I put this simply because I realized when we address the mixed audience, we cannot expect a kind of a perfect one type of presentation. Even myself could be at the bottom there compared to those who know more about this subject. So this is just to simply put it there so that we'll be aware of the variation in our knowledge of this subject. Nevertheless, I will approach this in a simple way, as far as I am concerned, by addressing some main questions. The main questions that we want to answer would be, number one is, what is Islamization of knowledge in human sciences? What does it mean? And secondly, why? Maybe why, you can say, why is it necessary? Why is it important? Why is it needed? And so on. That kind of question. And how. So this, maybe to make it simple, you just keep in your mind that at the end of this presentation, 2-session presentations, there will be answers to this in one way or another. Now, to put it more structured, so I have allocated, or I have slotted this question into my structure of presentation. I divide into 2. Part 1, I will address the question what and why. And this will be basically in this session. And later, when we meet next week, I will address the second part. The first part can be regarded as the conceptual, theoretical, and that kind of thing. And the second part is practical, applied. Maybe after we have been exposed to this idea theoretically or conceptually, that can be enhanced further by looking at the examples of how this can be, or how is this practiced or implemented. And therefore, the question how will be addressed next week, inshallah. Therefore, I would put here as an outline of my presentation for the 2 sessions. I will start with introduction, and later I will touch on terms, definition, and concept. And when we talk about Islamization of human sciences, my approach is that there must be a framework to do that. And for that reason, I will also talk about this today. And basically, like I will mention this as a molder and also the filter, the 2 words that I will use later. So these are the outlines for the 2 sessions of my presentation. So maybe for this session, I will cover introduction, terms, definition, and concept, as well as framework for Islamizing human sciences. I believe to many of us, maybe if you are new to this subject, it sounds a bit odd to talk about Islamization of knowledge, Islamization of this, Islamization of that. But as we go through later, you will find that it is not something quite alien in the frame of thinking of a Muslim, but in fact, it is a logical consequence of having that particular framework to talk about Islamization, even though the word Islamization, even though we don't use the word Islamization, but in essence, in practice, that kind of process takes place, whether we realize it or not. But provided we have that frame of thinking, which triggers the effort of Islamizing things. So under introduction, I simply want to put it in a context, and the context is from the broadest to the what you call it, the more focused one. And I will not spend much time on this because as a background, it may go back to the history. So what is there in history that could be justify our need for looking at knowledge in certain way? And contemporary context also, we do have circumstances or situations that call for this kind of discourse or this kind of effort to be undertaken. So we have in history the reason that is grounded in history, the reason that is grounded in contemporary time to talk about knowledge and also sciences, from the perspective of Islam. What does it mean by from the perspective of Islam? This is what we are going to address. So quickly on this, basically, if you look at history, then I think this is too far away that we want to go there, but simply to put it in perspective so that you can get some idea as to how right from the very beginning of the creation of the first man, Adam, knowledge was very significant, and very knowledge was very much attached to God, very much related to God right from the very beginning. God being the creator, he created man, and he gave man knowledge, and the knowledge that man got, it was directly from God, and it is meant for serving God. So that is in history. So when it comes to the time of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, I think I do not need to repeat the same thing that have been mentioned about the importance of knowledge right from the first revelation given to the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in terms of the verses, Iqra and so on. And this has been deliberated very much. So to talk about the importance of knowledge for human beings, I think that is a truism by itself. It does not have to be repeated. Al-Quran comes just to stress that as a universal need of human being to have knowledge. If they want to live according to what is created for them in terms of laws governing their living or their life, then knowledge is something that is accepted universally to be important. There is no question about the importance of knowledge, except that in the Quran, there have been many instances of the stress on the nature of knowledge, sources of knowledge, and other things which form what we call the holistic concept of knowledge in Islam, or if you want to be more difficult, you can call that Islamic Epistemology, which I will also touch later. But that is a long time ago. What about in our time? So if you go to literature and writings of modern scholars and leaders and so on, the concern has always been on the fate of Muslims nowadays. What is actually taking place in the world of in the world today, particularly which affect Muslim Ummah. So basically, in a nutshell, Muslim Ummah today, or Muslims in general, are not better than others in almost all aspects if we are to look at the data itself. So of course they have a religion with them which is left to be what I call is practiced and presented and understood in certain way, or in certain way, so that what is expected of them by religion could be realized accordingly. So you can read Islamization of Knowledge. I think you have been presented with this already, introducing you to the books of Ismail Faruqi, Said Muhammad Naqib Al-Atas, and so on. But the way out is to consider both types of knowledge, that is knowledge generated from grounded in revelation, and grounded and also the knowledge that are or the sciences which are also developed through the use of human potentials like logics and rationality, and even particularly now through the scientific investigation. So therefore, three objectives that I want to achieve when I make this presentation. Number one, I already started that I want to reiterate some relevant points regarding Islamization of knowledge, and then to understand the meaning of and rationale for Islamization of knowledge in human sciences, and number three, to demonstrate the application of Islamization of knowledge concept in human sciences. So these are only the three objectives that I set for us to achieve, inshallah. My approach would be, Dato, I can't think of the easiest way of elaboration or discussion of this topic, except that I will go by elaborating each of these key concepts. I think regardless of your specialization in natural or social sciences, I think this is quite universal, where we look at the key terms, and then we elaborate from there in order to achieve the objectives that we have set. So there are four. I put here Islam, Islamization of knowledge. So we have Islamization, knowledge, and human sciences. Basically three, but I think we can delete Islam if you like, because that can come after my deliberation. So, so therefore, what I will do next is to look at the word Islamization, knowledge, and human sciences. Obviously, Islamization comes from the word Islam. And when it is grounded in the word Islam, Islam itself has many dimensions. It is broad. There are many. So I will mention some of these later. Islam means Allah. Islam means revelation. Islam means I call it a comprehensive system of life. So all these are related to Islam. So you cannot say Islam without talking about Allah. There is no Islam without revelation. There is no Islam without Tawheed. And then Islam that has been revealed to the Prophet Muhammad SAW is a comprehensive way of life. How do we put this religion comprehensively in life, including, for example, dealing with knowledge? So there are so many aspects of Islam that need to be put into action by the adherents or followers of Islam. And when this takes place, naturally, it is already Islam in practice. Islam in practice. And we have known already the main structure of Islamic teachings earlier in terms of the Aqidah aspect, or the faith aspect, or the belief aspect, and then the practice aspect, and then the ihsan aspect of that. Now, whether we like it or not, what we have done in order to make Islam translated into real life, we are doing actually basically Islamization. We are doing Islamization. And therefore, any effort that we have taken to translate Islam into actual life, either at individual or social life, that is an act of Islamization. Of course, we don't call it Islamization all the time, but I think that is the essence. What is the purpose of then of that particular effort? Any effort. So we talk about Islamization of Aqidah, Islamization of society, Islamization of education, Islamization of soul, Islamization of all those things. None other than to make what we want to Islamize compliant or in line with the expectation of Islam. In other words, we want through that process something that is maybe that can be called generally as Islamic. So if we don't have a kind of belief that is not Islamic, then Islamization means effort that make us having Islam as belief system, as a religion, and so on. So I think these are the three important terms when we want to talk about Islamization here. So I will focus, therefore, effort at making knowledge in line with the expectation of Islam. So that might be my initial definition of Islamization of knowledge. So therefore, if you look at this, we have in the first place, I mean, for those who embrace Islam, they have with them Islam as a way of life. I think you can go back to what had been mentioned earlier in terms of the scope of Islam, the structure of Islam, the meaning of Islam, the characteristics of Islam. This is all these are giving us an idea about what Islam is. Yeah. So, and then on the basis of that, we move further, looking at what Muslims do. Basically, the term, for lack of a better term, maybe we have to use the word Islamization, even though it may not necessarily be used. But let's say before doing da'wah, it is Islamization, because basically Islam expects us to do that, for example. And then the areas, the field, and the life in general that is what you call to be the field for Islamization would be many. Maybe if I use the term in sociology, in all areas, what we call social institution, in education, in politics, in economics, in military, and religion, in the broader sense, and so on. So in culture. So basically, the point of departure is Islam, from which people or followers of Islam undertake efforts to make things compliant with the expectation of Islam in order to produce these things which are Islamic in nature. So I think the illustration should make it clear. So with regard to Islam, as I said, I think there are many aspects of Islam that we can talk about. And I just want to highlight after this the one aspect that is Islam as a worldview. Islam as a worldview. What does it mean by this? Maybe in a simpler form, I will try to talk about this. But before that, we are now talking about Islamization of knowledge. And many people have talked about this, and earlier presenters as well did touch on this. But I am attracted to one quotation from my friend also here. It mentioned the first part of this, that is, it is almost impossible to find two Islamization of knowledge scholars who agree on the mere definition of IOK, or Islamization of knowledge, including its scope and modus operandi, or operandi. So I want to take that statement to justify the diverse perspectives that people may have, and also approaches in talking about Islamization of knowledge. You might have heard about this from other people. This is the way he or she explains, and so on. All this might have contributed to the variations in the explanation about Islamization of knowledge. So from here, what you have to see is this is my way of explaining things. So if you find some similarities, take that as the points for enhancing that knowledge. But if you find some differences, then take this as addition to what you have heard, or the different way of looking at things. So that is as far as Islam, or Islamization, basically, the first term. Let us look at knowledge, because we are talking about Islamization of knowledge in human sciences. Again, maybe it was also mentioned earlier by earlier presenter that we are not talking about God's knowledge here, of course. We are talking about human knowledge. So I think that is the reason why some scholars have stressed this. We are not talking about Islamization of knowledge, because knowledge could be God's knowledge, angels' knowledge. We are talking about human knowledge, the knowledge that has been developed by human beings. So human beings, as we all know, while being the best creature, it is still creature. Creature has limitations, and human has limitations. And because of that, whatever they produce have definition, what you call is limitations, including knowledge. And that is number one. Number two, regarding knowledge, knowledge is a term that may be approached and discussed in many ways. One way of talking about knowledge is by looking at the concept of knowledge itself. In a more bombastic manner, you can call it epistemology. Epistemology is science of knowledge, or knowledge of knowledge, ilmul ilm. So under epistemology, all kinds or all subjects or topics about knowledge is discussed. So here, for example, meaning of knowledge, nature of knowledge, purpose of knowledge, sources of knowledge, classification of knowledge, and so on. Now, before we come to what I want to talk later, this form part of the framework for Islamization of any subject matter, including human sciences. Yeah. So that is the second one. And the third one, now, this is the statement that I am making here. So far, I will hold firm to this until I am argued not to subscribe to this statement. I would say, now, already now people talk about knowledge not as an uncountable, what you call it, noun, or now sometimes people talk about knowledges, which to me maybe they are referring to sciences. Yeah, never mind. The term we put aside. Later we will talk about this. But all useful knowledge is Islamic when they have been subjected to Islamic worldview and Islamic epistemology. That is why we always pray that Allah give us useful knowledge. Ilman nafi'ah, useful knowledge. So what does it mean by useful knowledge? The knowledge that human creates, but they have been either based on Islamic worldview and epistemology, or has been refined by Islamic epistemology, and so on. So, of course, a conventional way of presenting or explaining knowledge, what you call the hierarchy of knowledge, all level is considered knowledge, but there are different forms and intensity. But the highest one, according to what people can think of, is what we call wisdom. You may have lots of data in the beginning, but this data have been more organized, become information, and more synthesized information become knowledge, and knowledge has been further what we call analyzed to produce insight, and that is what people call wisdom. That is why you will find that sometimes, even though a person or scientist have dealt with lots of data, and towards the end they may come only with one sentence, and that one sentence summarizes the wisdom behind all the data that they have. All right. So that could be one way of looking at this human knowledge. I have been using the same thing, but I draw further, because after wisdom is what? This is the question. After wisdom is what? There are so many things which are not answered. So that is why we have to talk about this. Now, so human sciences, of course, this is by definition, it relates to man, to human, individual, or social. Human sciences also may be equated to social sciences, and it is basically dealing with what is human, social, and cultural. And we must remember also, even though they are human, but it operates within environment, within circumstances. We cannot understand human in isolation from other realities, including natural realities and so on. So the interaction between natural sciences, engineering, medicine, and so on, with human sciences must be very close. That is why you find some universities, they have made it compulsory for the natural science people to take human science, because ultimately natural science, like the good engineering work, is meant for what? For human. So the integration of this wisdom in the natural science and also social science should be the case for a holistic and balanced development of human being as a person, as well as a member of society. So I think I just put here what do we mean by social sciences or human sciences. These are some of the what you call it. I take it from Google. There are many other ways of explaining it. So I am in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology. They are combined together under the same department. But this is just for the students. I used to say to students that if you come here to study, don't only take knowledge, but you also need to learn skill and values. And in pedagogy, when we teach the students, we should also take into account this one, because, for example, we do not want them to only get knowledge, but knowledge without values, and they don't also have skill. So, example, if I teach a subject and this subject or teach a topic and this topic has definition, I don't give them definition. But I teach them skills how to produce definition, because that is more universal. And they can use that skill in order to produce definition of not only that particular concept, but other concepts. So this perhaps should be a shift in the pedagogy and also the way we teach the student. So to me, we are now coming actually closer to the end of this subject or of this presentation. Don't worry, Dato', even though you might see it to be what you call this, but I'm relating all this now. So when we talk about Islamization of knowledge in human sciences, in practice, it means subjecting human sciences to the Islamic worldview and Islamic epistemology. And then when we talk about human knowledge, human either construct knowledge, or once they have constructed knowledge, we have knowledge. So we use also worldview and also epistemology to filter or to assess, to evaluate that particular knowledge. To me, these are the two major roles of Islamic worldview. That is to make things, what you call is compliant with Islam. So I think this is just definition. You have looked at this already. This is from Said Muhammad Naqib Al-Atas. You see the word worldview there, very important. And then here also the word vision. And then Muhammad Kamal Hassan, Professor Muhammad Kamal Hassan used the word Islamic worldview and philosophy of knowledge. That is basically Islamic epistemology. Yeah. So now, so what is the framework for Islamizing human sciences or social sciences? So therefore, as a model, I would say like this: human sciences, this would be the different branches that I have showed you just now, but they need to be built upon Islamic epistemology and Islamic worldview. That is basically the idea. So even if I don't have time, I will stop here. But since I still have basically 6 minutes to go, so I will just simply elaborate. But in case you wonder what is Islamization of knowledge in human sciences, 2 statements that I have made. Number one, that subjecting any human science like sociology, anthropology, psychology, political science, and so on, to Islamic worldview and Islamic epistemology. So by doing this, it will reveal what are the missing dimensions, what is the gap, what are the strengths of this particular subject. So basically, that is number one. And number two, this is the illustrative model that you can see there. So now I don't have much to say after this, but I would say that the focus of Islamization of knowledge in human sciences is modern social sciences, contemporary social sciences. Why? Because they have different worldview. They have been founded upon different worldview, different epistemology, and that is why we need to engage with Islamization of knowledge. But it is also possible to create new knowledge based on Islamic worldview. So why we say that contemporary, modern, or Western, or secular social sciences become the target of Islamization? Because we may have different attitudes towards the West, including or anything Western, including including knowledge. Some among Muslims may accept and adopt Western knowledge fully without question. Some may reject it. Others may be indifferent, doesn't matter whether it is Western or non-Western, or doesn't matter. And yet others they accept it with a critical mind, accept what is positive and reject what is negative. How do we know? I think only when we subject this science to Islamic worldview and Islamic epistemology, we would be able to do to get this. So at this stage, I think I have already concluded that what we mean by framework is Islamic worldview. Part of Islamic worldview is Islamic epistemology. Yeah, and they form the framework for us to either construct knowledge which is Islamically oriented, or if we already have knowledge around, like modern sociology, Islamic worldview and Islamic epistemology can be used to evaluate or to filter. It become parameters for evaluating this. Yeah? So a little bit of illustration. If we want to have analogy, we may look at tree. Tree is very nice outwardly and above the surface, but we seldom think about what is beneath the surface, right? So therefore, when I talk about knowledge, knowledge can be divided into two. One is what can be seen by naked eyes. The other one is this one. So therefore, here is the worldview and epistemology upon which this one. If the worldview and epistemology are secular, then what is built upon is basically secular, even though there are some similarities to a certain extent. Certainly, with a building, we look at building very nice, but beneath the surface upon which the building is built, then you find this one. So I think these are some of the important things, but I just want to put here, I will not go to this. So what does it mean by Islamic worldview? This will be later elaborated. By worldview, I mean, how do you understand all these concepts from Islamic perspective? And basically, this is what is it? So Dato', I will stop here by concluding that Islamization of knowledge in human sciences means subjecting human sciences to Islamic worldview and also Islamic epistemology. What is Islamic worldview? Islamic worldview is the total understanding about these key concepts and other related concepts from the Quranic points of view, and altogether they form our worldview, and worldview function as the filter as well as the shaper or molder of any knowledge. So I think that is all for today. When we meet next week, I will have 2 or 3 more slides on this to elaborate, and then I will show you 4 or 5 examples of how Islamization of human science take place at the level of institution, curriculum, research, and subject. I think that is all. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Prof. Hazizan, for making a very interesting lecture and your beautiful presentation on the slides. I really like it very much, you know. You make your slide very lively, and I think this is my first time listening to you with very simple presentation on Islamization of human sciences. You know, as I told Dr. Hazizan before, do not make it too academic, but today he really do it, and he really presented the topic very well. Alhamdulillah, he is able. Interestingly, he relate Islam, Islamization, and knowledge of human sciences, and Islam. You have a circle where Islam, Islamization, and Islamic, which means not all the knowledge that come from the West has to be rejected. Is that right, Hazizan?
Oh, yes, yes.
There are some Western knowledge developed by the non-Muslim are Islamic in nature. So there are some which are not Islamic, which need some kind of injection of Islamic values inside there. This is what Prof. Hazizan said, that it is an Islamization of knowledge, although he did not stress it very much. He doesn't want to make it the thing too technical, you know. What is important for you to understand what Islam and Islamization is. Thank you very much, Prof. Hazizan. Inshallah, we will see you again in the next class. I know it is.
Inshallah.
Please share your slide with me. I will share with all the others, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh. I will share the slide after the session 2, Dato', inshallah, so that they have a complete set of that.
Okay. Even they may want to revise what we have given the lecture today.
Yeah.
You just said it to me, and next week we share another slide. They want to revise maybe your based on the lecture.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you,
Dato'.
And if possible, you share some simple notes on some small articles. Beside your book, I have already shared with all the others. Your book on Islam and Islamic perspective on sociology and anthropology. That might be technical for the others. They look at that.
Inshallah.
Just some other note, inshallah. Thank you.
Next week, when I give examples, then I will couple the explanation with some reading materials or reference material, inshallah.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
Dato'. I hope it meets your expectation. I do not know how to be simple anymore.
I'm very happy with that. Yeah, I'm sure. Very interesting. Thank you.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wassalam. Belum. Professor Aslam, are you already in?
Yes, Dato'.
Oh, okay. Welcome, Professor Aslam, to our last session today. It will be very interesting to some when they look at economic and business. Our topic would be the last topic on Islamization of knowledge in economics and business. For those who are not in the field of economic business, might feel bored of this topic. So I told Professor Aslam, make it very general so that everybody will enjoy your lecture on the knowledge of economic is part of your life. Business is also part of your daily activities. So he will make it very simple, inshallah, because we limited time of 45 minutes. Professor Aslam, of course, is the professor, well-known professor in Islamic economics from International Islamic University, and Islamization of Economics is his core area. He has written articles and books related to this. So I will share with you whatever the material that he will share with us, inshallah. So without further ado, I will call upon Professor Aslam to present your case.
All right, thank you very much, Dato. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. To all participants, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I think it is also very appropriate we begin our last, it's 21 Ramadan. So may this last 10 nights be the most productive and meaningful for everyone, inshallah. Let me just share with you the screen. Now, as Dato mentioned, I have been tasked to talk about. I have been asked to talk about the topic. Are you able to see the screen, Dato? It looks very large in my computer. So, is it okay for?
Yes, Professor.
Yeah, it covers the whole screen in my computer. So I'm just
yes. All right.
So I've been tasked to talk about Islamization of knowledge with reference to and although initially economics and business, but I think it equally applies to finance. And these are the three areas besides accounting that we have in our Kuliah of Economics and Management Sciences. So it applies equally. Also, as mentioned by Dato' just now, I'm going to try and make it as general as possible with some examples. And probably those examples will be in economics and maybe some in finance. Rather than business, because most of the writings in this area have actually been done in finance and maybe less in economics. But since I'm in economics, I will be more comfortable with economics and then some examples in finance. But I think equally it applies to the different areas in business, whether it is marketing or management. Yeah? So it will be a relatively simple presentation. I choose to actually give a very short recap of Islamization of knowledge. I know you've heard this already, so many lecturers. I was looking at the entire program, and I believe there are even, besides today's speakers, there were also one or two other speakers that talked about Islamization, and therefore you would have already heard maybe some of this. But I think it's important again to just remind everybody of how Islamization of knowledge is. And I'm just as Dr. Hazizan just now, I will just focus on the why and the what. Yeah, maybe next week, as he mentioned, we may give a little bit more on the how. All right. So recap of IOK, and then a brief historical note on Islamization of economics, business, and finance. And this historical note, I have to say, is actually more of Islamization of economics, because business and maybe even finance came a bit later, all right? Then we will talk about why we need to talk about Islamization of knowledge with reference to economics, business, finance. And then what is this Islamization of knowledge with reference to economics, business, finance. I will very, very briefly touch on operationalizing, because I think in next week's session, we may discuss a little bit in more detail about the how. But I just want to mention a little bit on curriculum and textbooks, and then some concluding points. Right, so let's just move. Okay, so a recap of Islamization of knowledge, the why and the what. I believe this morning itself, Prof. Shukran and also Prof. Hazizan have talked about this in different ways. But just for my own benefit, I want to make it
clear to me, and then connect it to economics and business. Why do we talk about this need for Islamization of knowledge? Or as mentioned by Prof. Shukran, we should read it as the Islamization of human knowledge, or the Islamization of acquired human knowledge. I think some writers even said Islamization of contemporary knowledge. Okay, I think when people use the term Islamization of human knowledge or contemporary knowledge or modern knowledge, they are referring to the disciplines that we teach in our universities, especially in the human sciences or the social sciences. So we're talking about economics, business, finance, sociology, political science. So these are usually the areas that writers have talked about when they discuss Islamization of knowledge. Yes, they are referring to the modern knowledge that we teach in these disciplines. Now, so what's the problem with this modern knowledge? I think you must definitely already know this. All these disciplines that we teach in the social sciences, in the human sciences, if you look at the background, you will see that they actually go back to, over the last 300 years, to the experience of Western Europe. Okay, economics, for example, we always say that, you know, Adam Smith, is the father of economics. Of course, there were some people before him, but it is talking about the experience of economics in Europe. Okay, and this is the reality, because you know, in order to understand this better, you need to appreciate the history of civilizations. European nations and civilization maybe were on the uptrend, whereas Muslim civilization was on the decline. And therefore, these bodies of knowledge that we teach in our universities today, even in Muslim countries, are basically disciplines that were developed in the Western European history and experience. And therefore, Professor Alatas has talked about this very clearly in his book, Islam and Secularism. And even Almarhum Ismail Faruqi talked about the fact that the knowledge that we have today in the social sciences and human sciences are very Eurocentric. Yeah, they are focused on a European worldview. Right now, many aspects of this worldview, of the foundations, the methodology, the philosophy, may not be in line with the Islamic worldview. Right, and therefore, in the case of economics, when we talk about the policies that are put forward, they may also not be relevant or acceptable from an Islamic perspective. Having said that, I also fully agree with what was mentioned by Datuk just now, that we don't have to throw away everything that has been developed over the last 300 years. Right? So what we need, and I will mention this a bit later, what we need is actually a critical evaluation. All right? So why do we need this Islamization of knowledge? Because the disciplines that we are teaching in universities today, in the name of economics and business and finance, they may not be acceptable from an Islamic point of view. And the simplest example we can give for this is the fact that the current economic system is a riba-based system. So how can we be teaching economics in Muslim countries when it is involving riba? So we have to talk about an alternative, economics and finance and business, that does not involve riba. Okay, so this is maybe the simplest example I can think of why we need to talk about Islamic economics, Islamic business, Islamic finance, etc. Now, what is IOK? Based on the IOK agenda, and I think again I go back to the point raised just now by Dr. Hazizan and also earlier by Prof. Shukran, we are talking about a critical interaction, or a critical dialogue between the Turath al-Islami, the Islamic legacy, and modern knowledge or modern disciplines. So we're talking about economics as a discipline. We're talking about finance, as an area that talks about how you finance your economic activities, etc. This critical interaction has to be of course, modern economics, but also the foundations of modern economics. All the major proponents, and basically we are talking about Professor Alatas and Almarhum Ismail Faruqi and the IIIT, they mention this, that we are talking about epistemology and methodology. What is epistemology, methodology? Basically, it's our theory of knowledge, the sources of knowledge, and how we understand the sources of knowledge in our respective disciplines. Okay, so when we want to do this critical interaction between Turath al-Islami and modern knowledge, we have to also address the philosophical and methodological issues of the discipline. And as you will see later, one of the challenges in economics has been not many Islamic economists give attention to the foundations. We have been maybe giving a lot of attention to banking and finance, but we don't talk about the foundations of that banking and finance. Okay, so this is maybe one of the concerns. So this, in a nutshell, is what Islamization of knowledge is. And to be more precise, Professor Alatas used certain terminology. He said that Islamization of knowledge requires us to de-Westernize modern economics. Why? Because this modern economics comes from Europe. Of course, today maybe Europe is challenged also by America. So the term used in the 70s was the West. So we need to de-Westernize modern economics. Then we infuse that neutral knowledge now with Islamic values. So you take out the Western values or worldview, etc., and you infuse with Islamic values and worldview, and that's basically a simple way of trying to understand. Ismail Faruqi in 82 used this very brief definition: recasting modern economics. So recasting, remolding, modern economics by eliminating, amending, reinterpreting, and adapting the components of modern economics according to the worldview of Islam. So again, it's talking about critical evaluation of modern economics. Now, he doesn't say rejection. He doesn't say, throw out everything. It is recasting, critical evaluation. All right. So when we critically evaluate, there are things that we will have to, to throw out. Riba, for example, we can't accept riba in our system. We need to find an alternative. But there could be certain things that we could accept. Yeah. For example, the need for financing activities. This is needed. You can't say that somehow or other you're going to devise a system that doesn't require financing. You need to have it. Okay. And some of the things you may need to modify. So we can accept in general, but we have to make modifications. Maybe we will give examples as we go along. Both of these two definitions by Alatas and Faruqi clearly imply that the Islamization process, in this case economics, business and finance, is primarily this epistemology and methodological concern. We need to integrate the two inputs, Turath and modern knowledge. A simple diagram to try and show what we are trying to do. We want to develop contemporary Islamized bodies of knowledge. So in this case, we're talking about economics, etc. in our presentation. We have the Turath, we have modern knowledge. Both need to be critically evaluated. Okay. This is a certificate for Islamic revealed knowledge. Therefore, I'm assuming that maybe there are quite a few who are coming from the Turath background, or maybe you are coming from the modern sciences background, and you want to see how the Turath is relevant for your discipline. I think these are two very important inputs. Both need to be to be given sufficient attention. When we use the term Islamization of knowledge, sometimes it only refers to that modern knowledge on the right. Okay, but when you critically evaluate modern knowledge, it has to be done with knowledge from the Torah, because that represents our Islamic worldview. Okay, so really, whether you are in economics or business or finance or sociology or political science, if you want to develop the contemporary bodies of knowledge, you must be able to have knowledge of both inputs. And this really is one of the big challenges we face in trying to develop contemporary Islamic economics or business or finance. It's not easy for people to master both. Okay, and I think this is one major challenge that we face. Yeah, so we need to critically evaluate both inputs and then genuine integration. I'm using the term genuine because there's also been criticism of Islamization of knowledge. And the reason is because sometimes when people try to develop the contemporary bodies of knowledge, it is not really convincing. Yeah? And some critics have actually said that this process doesn't do justice to to what you want to actually do. Oh, why is it not moving? Sorry, it seems to be meeting controls. Oh, my apologies. I seem to have done something that I don't know what I've done, and I face now a problem trying to apologies. I don't know what I hit, but I hit something, and I can't seem to get my slide. Hold on. Okay, I saw it there. Okay. Sorry, is that screen? Are you all able to see the screen? Are you able to see the screen? Sorry, anyone?
Yes, Prof. Yes,
Oh.
you can see. Yes.
All right. Yeah, I must have.
You have to make it bigger now. Okay.
Is that okay? All right. Okay. So let me just go on. Okay. So what do we need in order to have this genuine Islamization? And I'm referring to the work of Professor Latas. I think the little booklet was called Islam and Philosophy of Science or something like that. Because we are focusing on epistemology and methodology, if you really want to have Islamization of knowledge and then integration to develop the modern bodies of knowledge from Islamic perspective, we need to also critically examine the methods of modern sciences. You need to critically evaluate the concepts that we use in those sciences. For example, in economics, we have things like the rational economic man, the agent that is being the center of the decision making. We have to critically evaluate the assumptions that they use in economics. For example, the assumption that the rational economic man only wants to maximize his own satisfaction. We have to critically evaluate this. Okay, we have to look at the importance and relevance of empirical studies. Today in economics, empirical studies dominate, but sometimes empirical studies itself is not the end of everything. Just because people behave in a certain way doesn't make it right, doesn't make it correct. So Islamic economics and business and finance requires us to understand what are the lessons we get from the empirical result. Sometimes we have to change the behavior of people and not just accept it as this is the behavior of people and therefore it becomes part of your theory. Yes, it may become part of your study, but we have to always evaluate against what we need to do Yeah, so that is why I like the term used by some of our Islamic economists. They say that Islamic economics has to have transformational process. We must be able to transform the individual and society to come closer to the Islamic position. So when you do empirical study, you may find that people are doing things that they're not supposed to do. We take note of it, but we have to put forward policies to change their behavior. Okay, so maybe this is a very important part that is going to be part and parcel of this process of Islamization with reference to economics, business, and finance. Okay, brief historical note, and I think I'm going behind time, so I need to be a bit faster. The writings on Islamic economics actually goes back to the 1960s and even 1970s. Okay, but when we specifically want to look at Islamization of knowledge and its application to economics, business, and finance, you find that it is only in the 1980s that you can get, clear articles. For example, Najatullah Siddiqui in 1984. Earlier, he had written something in 1982 about the approach to Islamic economics, where he implies Islamization. Probably Anna Zarqa's article is really on the dot. It was initially in Arabic in 1984, Tahqiq Islamiyat Ilm al-Iqtisad al-Mafhum wal-Manhaj, talking about the methodology, the understanding and methodology of Islamic economics, of Islamization of economics, right? So it goes back to the 1980s. Most Islamic economists, they don't really talk about Islamization process. They go directly to Islamic economics. In other words, they go to the end product, right? But I think it's very important for some people to actually focus on Islamization process, because if you don't have a proper process, your end product may not be right. Okay, so, and in this presentation, I will be using the acronym ISMO-EBF, Islamization of Economics, Business, and Finance. We have pioneer Islamic economists. They all wrote Islamic economics, and what they did was they basically presented Islamic economics that was already Islamic, right? So they went through a certain process. They didn't explain that process very clearly. They did it themselves and produced works in Islamic economics. But if you look at their works, they would have modern knowledge, they would have Turath, and they would be integrating the two. And that is what Islamization, the integration of knowledge is all about, Islamization and relevantization. Not many works focus on methodology and epistemology. Most writings have been over the last 20 years in banking and finance. And while we think, of course, it's very important, there are some who are critical and say that this general approach lacks, roots of the discipline. Why do we need to have Islamization of economics, banking, finance? I'm using the definition I gave just now on the definition of Islamization of knowledge. So why do we need Islamization of economics, banking, finance? Well, modern economics, business, finance is not value free. It's not ideology free. The modern economics that we teach globally is basically coming from Western European history and experience. These foundations, aspects of them may not be in line with Islamic worldview. Therefore, we have to modify, we have to critically evaluate, we have to reject, we have to accept, we have to modify. Okay, example, I think I gave it already. The fact that the example given in modern economics, the nature of man is greedy and only interested in maximizing his own self-interest. The models that we use in economics do not talk about the possibility of man thinking about other people in their decision making. So in Islamic economics, probably we need to think about the human agent, whether you call that person Islamic man or Homo Islamicus or whatever, Taqwa man. I mean, there are various people use different terms. what is the nature and what is the characteristic of that economic agent in Islamic economics. Yeah, we may want to put forward a different human agent and therefore different behavior and therefore different theories. What is Islamization of economics, banking, finance? Sorry, Islamic economics, business and finance. Critical interaction and dialogue with modern economics, business, finance. Okay, so you critically evaluate. Certain things you have to reject, certain things you can accept, certain things you need to modify. All right, but don't forget, we have to also critically evaluate the foundations of economics, business and finance. Okay, and of course in the area of economics, I already mentioned, one major weakness is that we have not given sufficient attention to foundations. Everybody wants to do, of course, application to banking, application to industry and to other areas, but sometimes when they jump the foundations and go directly to the applied areas, we may be guilty of replication, copying the existing institution. And I think banking is one example that has received a lot of criticisms as well. So we need to de-Westernize modern economics, business and finance, and then we infuse it with Islamic values and principles. Or, according to Almarhum Ismail Faruqi, we need to recast modern economics, business, finance by eliminating, amending, reinterpreting, adapting its components according to the worldview of Islam. Right? It involves an integration of these two sources. Okay, so previously the slide was generally for knowledge. Now it's talking about contemporary Islamic economics, business and finance. So modern knowledge, we evaluate and Islamize. Turath, we evaluate and we relevantize. This is the term used in IIUM. I think Prof. Shukran may have mentioned it just now, coming from the Kuliah of Islamic Revealed Knowledge. They put forward this term relevantization. So for your Islamic Revealed Knowledge, we need to make that knowledge relevant to our contemporary needs, as mentioned by Dr. Hazizan just now. So critical evaluation of both and then genuine integration. And that is why IIIT for the last maybe 10, 15 years, they have used IOK as integration of knowledge. And I actually appreciate it when I explain it like this. If we just say Islamization is the entire process, the Turath, to say you want to Islamize the Turath may have some challenges. Okay, so Islamization is for modern knowledge, relevantization is for Turath, and then both of these two are integrated. Okay, I'm working on a revised version of my survey of Islamization, and I hope to include this in this new edition of that survey. Yeah, so maybe this is how we can understand integration of knowledge of the two inputs. Now, just a very quick comment we've mentioned already. In the practical dimension for Islamic economics and business and finance, Islamic banking and finance has dominated, and they've tried to Islamize the practices of banks, for example. I of course I support the idea of Islamic banks, but having said that, I think it is our responsibility also to be evaluating the process, and sometimes the practice of Islamic banking may require some relook at what they are doing, because there's maybe criticism about the fact that it's replication and so on. You cannot have Islamic banking finance, you cannot have Islamic business, you cannot have Islamic in this area without the Islamic economics roots, the theoretical part. That's why the foundations are very, very important. I remember many years ago, Prof. Abbas Merajo from INSEF and also Prof. Zubair Hassan, they gave very nice example of, you know, Islamic banking finance. It's like a tree. The tree, it has fruits, but the tree doesn't have roots. And when you don't have roots in the tree, you know, can fall anytime, and maybe the fruits are going to be sour because the roots are not there. So really, if you really want to have meaningful Islamic banking finance, you need to have the Islamic economic roots. And then, of course, you need to have also the roots from the IRK, yeah, the Turath. The roots must be there. Now, I just want to spend a couple of slides. Since this is a certificate in Islamic revealed knowledge, remember we said we need the Turath, we need modern knowledge. Now, in the Turath al-Islami, what are the areas or the dimensions that are relevant for economics, business, and finance? Firstly, of course, we have to have the Quran, we have to have the Hadith, we have the sciences of the Quran, the sciences of Hadith. These are the core, right? Because the Quran and the Sunnah become you know, the primary sources, right? Quran and then the Sunnah. What else? What else? Of course, we need to talk about fiqh, and nobody is going to deny the importance of fiqh. So in our Kuliah of Islamic Revealed Knowledge, we have the Department of Fiqh and Usul Fiqh, we have the Department of Quran and Sunnah, and then we have the Department of the third one is comparative religion, the Department of I forget.
Usuluddin and comparative religion.
Usuluddin and comparative religion, right? So there are at least 3 departments. They have the general studies and so on. So when we are talking about Islamic legacy or heritage or Turath al-Islami, I would argue it is not only the fiqh and usul fiqh that is relevant for economics and business and finance. Even the knowledge that we get from the Quran and the Sunnah, knowledge from Usuluddin, would be important for us when we want to develop a proper Islamic perspective for economics, business, and finance. What we have, I think, and this is maybe we will discuss a little bit more in the next week's session, when we look at programs, there's too narrow focus on fiqh and usul fiqh. Okay, so let me try to just show this in a diagram. You know, we want to develop contemporary Islamic economics, business, and finance. We have modern knowledge, modern economics, business, finance, and then we have the Turath. Now, in that Turath, you have the substantive knowledge. For example, knowledge of Quran, knowledge of the Hadith, knowledge of fiqh. But we also have kalam, falsafa, tasawwuf, and these areas must also be part of your Islamic legacy. There's no time to get into it. Maybe later there could be another program for this. And then when it comes to the methodology, we always give focus on usul al-fiqh. But usul al-fiqh, at least the way it is understood by many people today, usul al-fiqh is the methodology of fiqh, and fiqh is understood to mean law. Okay, and therefore, what you have now when you look at the Turath is looking at the Turath and taking its legal dimension and the methodology that is used to develop that legal dimension. And this may not be sufficient when we want to develop Islamic economics or Islamic business or Islamic finance, because economics, business, finance is a social science, just as in sociology or in political science. So the methodology that we may want to develop must be a methodology for behavioral sciences or social sciences. And for economics, I in a paper, I have basically said we may need to develop an usul for economics, and we may call it usul al-iqtisad, but an usul, a methodology for social sciences, because usul al-fiqh may not be sufficient for economics. We may have more discussion later on this. Yeah. So in Turath, when we want to develop Islamic economics, business, finance, we need to utilize the entire Turath. All right? And in studies, and I know I'm not saying this without any basis, we did studies on curriculum of Islamic finance in Malaysia, and we found that we have a lot of emphasis on fiqh and usul fiqh in the curriculum, so much so that the employers say that the graduates who leave the Islamic finance program, right, they have a lot of knowledge in fiqh and usul fiqh, but not enough in finance. Okay, when we looked at it in greater detail, and we will discuss this maybe next week, we found that we have too many fiqh lecturers teaching in Islamic finance programs, and therefore the courses that they offer will be fiqh courses and legal courses, right? But the program is called Islamic finance. Okay, so I maybe I will just stop here and we address this next week. We need to develop contemporary Islamic economics, business, finance. We need the two inputs. We need to have critical evaluation and then creatively integrate and synthesize. Yeah. So next week we will do a little bit more on this. We need to have curriculum and textbooks. Right. This is of course a major part of developing Islamic economics, business, and finance. This is the task for academics, primarily academics. Yeah? And that is why I feel when we talk about Islamization of knowledge agenda, it is actually an agenda for the academics. We don't expect the students, to be, going into detail on Islamization. It is the academics' role. Why? When they are going to develop curriculum or to write textbooks, they need to decide how much of that textbook or that curriculum is going to be from Turath, how much from modern knowledge, how you are going to integrate the two so that the textbook becomes a genuine Islamic economics textbook, not economics, one section, and then fiqh mu'amalat, another section, and we say this is Islamic economics. And in order to do this, of course, the capability of academics are very, very, very important. Okay, so concluding points, IOK is very, very important if you want to develop new Islamized bodies of knowledge. We need the Turath, we need modern knowledge, we need to critically evaluate and then creatively integrate or synthesize. Islamic economics, banking finance requires us to use these two Turath and modern knowledge and then integrate it together. This process requires qualified academics to do that. So I will stop at this point, Datuk. If there is any question, if there is time, we can try to answer them if needed. Wallahu alam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Professor Aslam. Although you mentioned a lot of Islamization of knowledge, I think the knowledge of the participant on Islamization, as they have already listened to Prof. Shukran and Prof. Hazizan, is okay. But Professor Aslam has been mentioning a lot about the two scholars, Professor Nakib Al-Atas and Professor Ismail Faruqi. For those who are not familiar, you can Google up who is Ismail Faruqi, who is Professor Nakib Al-Atas. They are the father of Islamization of knowledge. So in the 70s. So this thing, the reason was that what we learned in university has been mentioned by Prof. Aslam, taken from Nakib Al-Atas. If we study economics, it is based on the Western textbook. Although it is published anyway, but it's a Western textbook. The knowledge is from Western knowledge and developed by the West. And of course, there are, as mentioned by Prof. Aslam, there are some, we call it non-Islamic or non-Islamic in nature, the knowledge. Is that right, Prof. Aslam?
Yes.
Then we need some critical evaluation on that. Because the Western textbook on economic, business, or finance are riba-based. They are riba-based. So nothing from the Islamic. And Professor Sam did mention about the Turath knowledge and the modern knowledge. and need some kind of integration or critical evaluation on both. So, as what has been mentioned by Faruqi, what we are doing in International Islamic University is that when they teach economics at the Faculty of Economics, they have to follow these steps: de-westernization and recasting the knowledge. So they have to eliminate whatever the Western concept which is not in Islamic in nature. So it is very important, as Professor Aslam was mentioning, that when you teach Islamic finance, you are not exposed to the knowledge of Islamic finance. It will become purely usul fiqh course or purely Sharia courses. So I can mention to you one of my friends. He was a senior person in business and in the bank. He was one of the general manager in the bank, and he was also doing his business in Turkey for 18 years. And he operated the first Islamic hotel in Turkey. So when he came back, he wanted to increase his knowledge in the Islamization. So he took up PhD at the age of 72. He graduated, of course, from one of the universities in Malaysia. And unfortunately, he got three supervisors, a supervisor and co-supervisors. One who specialized in Sharia, and the other one specialized in management, and the other one specialized in economics. Unfortunately, these three people do not match. So he found difficulty in graduating, especially during the Bible, because they are not in real communication. His topic was Maqasid Sharia in strategic management, application to waste solid material. So, of course, this is a big area. A person who specializes in Maqasid Sharia might not understand what strategic management is. Even they specialize in strategic management, they might not understand about the waste material. So we have an economist there. So this is the example that Prof. Aslam was giving. And Alhamdulillah, in IUM, we have already produced many graduates who are able to have some double degree, like Professor Shukran. He was the pioneer in Islamic Review Knowledge. He graduated with 2 degrees, one in Islamic Review Knowledge, one in psychology. So if he is psychology who understands both knowledge, Professor Aslam as well was one of the product for IUM. So we could see that, but these people are going to retire. Prof. Aslam is going to retire. So the new people will come back and will come to the university to develop these new areas. So I think your lecture has been very interesting, and people could relate in our everyday life how important economic, finance, and business is, and what we could see, especially the riba-based business and economic and finance.
Dato', would you give me 2 minutes? I just want to answer.
Sure, okay. There is one question in the chat.
Yeah.
Prof. Aslam,
Yeah.
Lecture, Prof. Aslam. I have one question. Islamic banking supposed to be riba free, why the loan policy practice by measure policy practice by measure so-called Islamic bank burdening the loaner. Islamic loan require borrower to pay more than the conventional bank offer. This major reason why Muslim opt for conventional loan. So need I'm sorry, I cannot read. This major reason why Muslim need conventional need pencerahan from Prof. Aslam. This coming from Sister Jamal. So could you please also tackle this question? You have some time, inshallah.
Yeah. Firstly, just to say that the main criteria of having an Islamic bank, if you want to call it an Islamic bank, is that you need to be avoiding riba, one of the main features. It's also an understanding of what you mean by riba. when you look at the writings of scholars, some people, they understand riba to mean interest, the banking interest. So if they, for example, replace that interest rate with profit rate, and do contracts that are selling a product at a higher markup, then sometimes it's possible that the markup price is higher than the interest charge of the conventional bank. But because the contract is a sale contract, right, it is acceptable, because the fuqaha will agree that it is okay for you to get a profit on your sale. And that is why sometimes so it's not a loan. Yeah? I think we need to correct. When you go to Islamic bank never gives you a loan. It sells you a product at a markup. This is the murabaha contract. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why sometimes Islamic banks can have a higher charge. But that's not the only reason why people are skeptical or critical of Islamic banks, because when they look at the banks and the way the calculation is done and generally the practice of the bank is doing exactly what the conventional bank is doing, except now, instead of interest rate, they call it profit charge. Instead of this product that the conventional bank has, they have another product which maybe has an Arabic term. So people are saying that Islamic banks need to go a bit more than that. So that is why in Malaysia, I hope this will become a reality. Bank Negara, about 4 years ago, introduced something called value-based intermediation. So they want Islamic banking to go beyond looking at just the profit. So they want Islamic banking to think about their responsibility, their corporate social responsibility, look at how the Islamic banking can achieve sustainable development. If this catches on, I believe that this will be a good way for Islamic banks to move forward. There's another one from Nuruddin, two actually from Nuruddin. One is about the book of Alatas on genuine IOK. Actually, Alatas didn't talk about genuine IOK. This 1989 book is a small monograph, Islam and Philosophy of Science. And it's actually a chapter in his book, the Prolegomena to Islamic worldview, Prolegomena to Islam and its worldview. Okay, so you can get it from that book. I don't have this particular thing because he didn't use the term genuine IOK. It's my term. And then Nuruddin as well about behavioral. We need a methodology for social science. And yes, you are right. In modern social science, they look at the behavior of people. So I don't have a problem. I think even in economics, in Islamic economics, we will also look at the behavior of people. So there will be positivist studies. Okay, but I don't think Islam would necessarily want to adopt positivism, meaning to say that everything is only verified and authoritative if it is based on the behavior of people. I mean, yes, we look at the behavior of people, but as I mentioned, sometimes the behavior may be wrong, right? So I would have thought that, yes, we do positive studies or positivist studies, but we may not necessarily make positivism the end all of behavioral science, because we still have to refer to our primary sources, which are the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay, so I think this requires another session. Brother Nuruddin is a regular and I think a much more advanced level for that. Yeah, so we need to have maybe another session for this. Wallahu alam. I think maybe.
Thank you very much, Pak Aslam. So I hope everybody enjoyed the lecture from Prof. Aslam. Inshallah, if you need some needed reading materials about Islamic economic and finance, you will be able to share with us. We are not going to give a highly technical article to Aslam, so that make you read and enjoy it. Okay, So inshallah we see you again, Prof. Aslam, next week.
Alright.
Inshallah.
Terima kasih Datuk. Terima kasih.
Jazakallah.
Ramadan Kareem.
Ramadan Mubarak to you. So for all the others, I hope you all benefited from the 13 weeks lecture already. So next week will be our last lecture for the certificate course. Inshallah, after this, we will be offering a higher level of this course. Inshallah, we go on the topic of Maqasid Sharia, Usul Fiqh, and other courses. Inshallah. So we are going to distribute to you a questionnaire for this certificate in Islamic Review Knowledge, which you have to answer. That means to certify that you have attended 70% of the classes. Your own declaration, nobody is checking. You are not checking. If you feel that you acquired the knowledge from our 14 weeks lecture, then you say yes, you have acquired it. So we will issue the certificate. Of course, you have to answer some questions here. No problem. Be honest to yourself. Okay. So we will issue the certificate. Some of you might be want to see I have achieved something, the knowledge from this program. So we have also some new brothers attending this class, as I mentioned to you. Dr. Wong from Hong Kong, he never miss our class here. We have important people like Dr. Umar Razif, Director General of TDC. Also, I see his name. Never miss. Kak Bibi from Singapore, and many others. Of course, I cannot see. I could see only a few that have been with us for the past 13 weeks. Alhamdulillah, attending this class in Ibadah. So not only the Fardu Ain knowledge, but this knowledge of Fardu Kifayah is very important to all of us. With that, I end this program today with Ramadan Mubarak to you. And we have the last 10 days now to complete our fasting for Ramadan. I hope all of us will focus on that, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And thank you to Prof. Aslam. Thank you.